Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast, football edition, brought to you by primary sponsor 3Chord. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and we're back again for the 2023 season. So here we're joined by Keith Brown, AJ Fairchild, and Tony Fairchild. So thanks again, guys, for joining me for year number 2 of the NWO Sports Football Podcast. So,
yes, sir.
What are you guys thinking?
Yeah.
Can't believe we're back here. Actually, it's just amazing that this Friday's week 1.
Just seems like it's starting earlier and earlier. I mean, and I know they moved it up, but it's just like, man, it's still summertime. And we were just talking about that today. It's like, oh my gosh, it's time to play football.
Even though it doesn't really feel like summertime right now.
I know.
Well, today it doesn't, no.
Well, anyways, for update, if you guys didn't know, we did have a live NWO Sports podcast where we interviewed coaches for the kickoff show. Went pretty well, and we appreciate everyone that attended and all your guys' feedback. It's awesome to hear you guys talk and let us know that you guys enjoyed it. Yep. So we're very appreciative of that.
Yeah, it was a blast, too. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll figure out if we want to do it next year or not, but we'll wait till that comes. So anyways, let's get into things. So we got some team previews coming up. So how we'll do it this year is we'll kind of take it conference by conference, and we'll kind of break it down, and we'll kind of have some talks about that. So none other than what we know best is the Green Meadows Conference. So coming into this season, I think there's one team that's on the board, and it's got tons of X's and O's all around it, and that would be the Antwerp Archers. I think, they only lose 2 starters, and I believe 3 seniors from last season. But man, oh man, do they have some talent. They've got quarterback Carson Altimus, wide receiver Landon Brewer, 2 all Ohio State players. I think they're the team to beat in the GMC. Your guys' thoughts?
I agree 100%. I think they definitely got the target. And like you said, they got a ton of talent, and they're going to be the team that everybody's gunning after. So, I mean, and Antwerp is going to be the team that's going to get everybody's best week to week.
Well, it's also kind of odd too that with Coach Hale there, he's at this point in the GMC, he's got the most experience as coach now. Players wise, they've got the biggest senior class, the most returning starters, so they've got the experience, the talent. They're definitely the target to aim for this year. Start of the season here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. Antwerp definitely a team to beat in the GMC and probably the entire area. Pretty much everything you'd want coming back.
I think
all starters on offense and defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be unstoppable this year. I think the only team that can beat themselves, it's going to be themselves. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You look at their schedule. I don't really see a team. There's a couple teams that could show some challenge, but I think they should have a pretty good time at rolling through that schedule. Quick point I want to bring up. AJ brought up. A lot of these GMC coaches are brand new for the first time, and we kind of had that discussion last Friday. Hicksville's got a new coach. Fairview has a new coach, even though Doug Rakes was there previously. Tenora's got a new coach. There's a lot of new faces in the GMC. Yep. Paulding, Coach Jim Menzie, this is his second year there. So,
and he took over literally right before the start of the season last year.
So this is the true full season for Paulding. So, yeah, a lot going on in the GMC. Running through to looking at Ayersville a little bit as well. They lose quite a bit of their talent. They lose their starting quarterback and Blake Honstein, all-state running back and Owen Berner. But I think Andrew Mickey's doing good things over there. We got to talk to him and sit down and really see where things are going. And he said, it's all about the foundation, and that foundation is going to start up front on the offensive and defensive lines. They have some big kids, and they have some very talented kids too. They had quite a few all-GMC selections as well. So I think the real question with Ayersville is if they can get some production out of their, skilled players and stuff like that. So,
yeah, they still have Abe Delano. But the only thing was, after talking to Coach Mickey, was that whether or not they're going to be able to get the ball to him like they did last year.
Yeah.
And, that'll be a big thing for them. If they can get him involved in that offense and, as good as an athlete as he is, maybe you move him to the backfield and just hand him the ball. Maybe you change things up a little bit. Who knows?
Keith, AJ?
What you guys touched on. The good thing is, if you're Ayersville, you have basically your entire offensive and defensive lines back. Bad part is your skilled positions other than Delano are pretty much inexperienced. So you lose Honstein and Berner. There's probably your 1-2 on offense.
Yep.
So, but anyways, like we talked to Coach Mickey. What an awesome guy. Seriously. Fantastic coach.
Yep.
Yes. So.
And that's like he kind of brought up, continuing on Ayersville, a little bit different type of quarterback too. Honstein was big, and he could, he could run downhill like a fullback, like Coach Mickey said. And, they have Lucas Fishpaw this year, a little bit smaller. I don't know if you can necessarily lay the wood like Honstein did, but if you could just have someone back there at quarterback who can really take command of the offense and really keep things moving in the right direction, make a couple completions here and there and keep that offense going. I think that's really going to benefit the Pilots this season.
Yep.
Let's kind of talk about a few other GMC teams here. Let's look at Edgerton for a little bit. Edgerton, they had their struggles with graduation. They lost a lot of seniors last year. Overall, they had a pretty successful season. They went 7-4. They had a playoff berth. And they were even in GMC title contentions last year. Yeah. But this year, it's a new year, and they're without that big threat of Corey Everett's. He was a star on that team for the last couple of years, so they're going to have to find an identity, and they're going to have to do it quick because, they got Eden right up, which that's always a rivalry game. So I think then you can figure out, who are we going to be this year?
Right.
But at least they have a couple other games that hopefully they should kind of manage. They have Hilltop week 2, Montpelier week 3, and see kind of where they get with things. So what are your guys' thoughts on Edgerton here?
I'm just looking at their schedule, and I realized that they play Eden, Hilltop, and Montpelier, which is the exact same thing that Antwerp does. So it's they just play them in a different order. But I think Edgerton's going to struggle a little bit with the loss of Everett. So they're going to have, and also they lost a lot of offensive linemen as well. Defense, they looked like they were fantastic last year, and again, like you mentioned, you got wrote down here, Logan, that until they come up against Sonora and Antwerp, and they lost to a combined 70-6. So I'm not sure what happened there, but it'll be interesting to see how they reload this year.
I think even too, looking at the defense, they do have a pretty good stud in linebacker Joel Walkup. He returns 93.5 tackles, 12 tackles for loss. Their defense has 7 starters returning. I think they may have to rely on that defense for a little bit. They got quality defensive backs in Corey Herman. He had 14 tackles, 3 interceptions last year. So, we kind of talked about that even Friday on the coaches show that we had. If one side of the ball is struggling, that other side, it's got to pick up for the lack of the production on the other side of the ball. So I think if they can do that, they'll have some success this year. But I think this year, Edgerton might be down just a little bit. So
Edgerton might be one of those teams you kind of look at as, a threat to kind of ruin your season a little bit. They could be that team that nobody really looks at as a major problem to face, and then all of a sudden, they come by with a quick win and knock you out of contention for the conference or something.
I'll have to bring up because I got 2 other teams in the GMC that are just like that. So I'll talk to them once we get to them. So Keith, you got any thoughts?
Just similar to Ayersville, unfortunately for Coach Everett, not only does he lose his key offensive threats, he also loses most of his offensive and defensive line. So it's actually probably a little behind Ayersville as far as returning starters. So
let's move on to the next team here. Let's talk about the Fairview Apaches a little bit. So again, Coach Rakes came on the show last Friday. We appreciate that. And, Fairview had their struggles last year. They went 0-10, but we talked to Coach Rakes, and, it's almost like he's living this for a second time through. His first stint, he was there. They were in the same position they are now. So he's won, and he's doing things the right way. I really liked what he said. It's not just about the X's and O's. Your winning habits and your culture, that starts off the field. Right. That's your presence in the locker room. That's your presence on the field, in the classroom. You got to take care of those things first, and that builds a winning culture. And he's been able to do that before. So I really like what his thoughts were on coming back around. I thought it was interesting that Coach Cooper from Defiance actually got him interested in coaching.
Yeah,
so very impressive.
Awesome. So. Best of best friends right there. I mean, you can't ask for a better friend than that.
Logan, you mentioned Coach Cooper, and Coach Cooper talked about just that off the field stuff. That's what they felt that they've done a great job at Defiance doing, getting those kids really involved off the field and being good people. That's what we talk about a lot.
Yep, exactly. Also looking at Fairview, they've got pretty tough slate for non-conference. Wauseon, Delta, Bryan, some bigger schools that they're going to have to compete against. And it's tough on the kids too. This is the 4th new offense in 3 seasons for them. And I was able to, discuss with some other coaches and stuff. And that's hard on the kids. You learn literally one whole system. The next year you're on to the other one. The next year you're on to the next one. So it's like kids can't get into a rhythm. And we talked to Coach Cooper about that at the show too. Even just playing on a Thursday, you want things as normal as possible. So, if you can really get the kids to buy in and understand, and that can be hard with so much change in a program as well. So
I got to ask a quick question. Rakes left in 2020. So did he have the senior class? Did the senior class play for him?
That's a good question.
3 years ago. So was that the class? Was that the freshman class when he left? Or
I would think there would have to be a class that he helped coach under.
It probably would be the seniors this year. I would.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So this might be some familiarity there with them.
Right.
So.
And it does sound like they're kind of going back to the way things used to be too. It's not like he's reinventing the wheel. He's going back to what those guys were kind of used to.
Right. What he stressed to us, you just have to build upon each single day. Probably going to be a rough season for Fairview. Just stay the course, as he stressed.
Yep.
Maybe a rough first year, maybe even a rough second year, but Coach Rakes knows what he's doing. Been down that road. So don't get frustrated and just listen to your coach. He's been there. He will guide you where the program was once before and will be again.
Exactly. And a couple positives that Fairview does have. They have some leading tacklers on defense that are back again this year, and linebackers Clayton Boland, he had 66 tackles and 1 sack, and Brett Grind, 66 tackles. Those two kids right there are going to have to really take the reins on the defense and, buckle things down if they want to improve. They gave up 39.1 points per game last season. That's got to be cut down in half if you want to be competitive. So that, and along with, just kind of improving their offense, they got a returning quarterback and sophomore, William Zedike, kind of got things thrown at him real quick as a freshman, but he's back this year, and I think we'll see some growth out of him as well.
Yeah, freshman quarterback gets varsity experience. I mean, that's ideal, honestly.
Yeah.
It's thrown into the fire, basically.
Can only really be a good thing going forward.
Right, continuing to develop as you get older. Yep. Let's move on. Next team here, Hicksville. Last year, another team in the GMC that, they've been trying to find their way. New first-year head coach in Justin Davis. He's a 2006 Edgerton graduate. He played outside linebacker for Defiance College. Actually was teammates with Coach Mickey. So he is the new head coach for the Hicksville Aces. They just have had 3 wins in the last 2 seasons. They're young in a lot of areas this year, but I think they're looking to improve. They got a couple solid running backs in George Green and Cross Seedike, and they return nearly all of their skilled players, which, coming into a season, the more players you can return, I feel like that's got to help at least improve, and, maybe they can get 3 wins this year and continue to build on top of that. So what are your guys' thoughts on Hicksville here?
The one big stat I've seen is last year they gave up 6 yards a carry. So they're going to have to, shore up that defensive front to slow down the run. Other than that, it's going to be interesting to see, once again, a first-year head coach, see what he does, and hopefully the program has embraced him and just moves forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be another one of those teams where we really don't know what to expect from them until we see a game or two to kind of understand what they're capable of.
Yeah, and Coach Lucas over there had a heck of a run. Fairview. Hicksville's not that many years away from being one of the more dominant programs in the GMC, honestly.
Right. Like when I was in high school, that was, 2012 to 15-ish or so. And, right before, I was getting in, I believe they had a couple regional final berths and
they had
Final Four.
Jake Greer as a quarterback and Parker Thiel and all those, which is not that long ago. So
exactly.
They have the athletes in the area, just need to, again, probably new coach, build a culture and get back to those winning ways.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this a couple times as we move forward here. But, looking at their schedule, they got Patrick Henry, Swan, Eden, Antwerp, first 4 games. A first-year head coach, possibly coming out of the gate going 0-4.
Yeah.
It's not going to look good, but you got to look at the teams that he's playing. So
yeah. Let's move on to the next team here. Looking at the Paulding Panthers, and AJ, this was one of the teams I was talking about that I think can shock a lot of teams. We watched them play in person last year, And over the last couple of years, and those kids play physical. I tell you what,
they did.
we watched them versus Tenora, and they hit hard. And my brother said it before too. Just a couple of years ago, they were the hardest hitting team that Tenora faced all year long. And I think that just goes a testament to their culture that they're trying to bring there. I think Coach Jim Menzie, he's really getting a buy-in from the kids as well. I think this is a year, you start to see a little bit more uprise out of the Paulding Panthers. Paulding has not won more than 4 games since 2008. They lose 6 starters this year. But again, they bring in a veteran offensive line. They have all 5 returning. They bring in their starting quarterback. And Jack Woods at linebacker. So they've got one of the better linebackers in the GMC coming back too. So what are your guys' thoughts on Paulding?
Basically, you covered it, Logan. We watched them play last year. They played well. I think I would agree with you. Paulding's going to be one of those teams they're going to get some wins, especially in the GMC, I think.
Keith, AJ?
I'm trying to think back. I believe towards the end of the season, even when they were, they still had a couple of losses at the end of the season there, but they were starting to kind of pull things together, started looking better as a team towards the end. When they faced us, they actually looked like they were getting it together a bit. Looked like, if they continue to build upon that going into this year, they could actually be somebody to have to worry about in the GMC, not just somebody to kind of get past.
Yeah, I think when we played them was late in the season, and actually it was, 3-3 going into the half, and then Dominic picked up that blocked field goal.
Yep.
Actually, Paulding was going to take the lead at the half.
They were, yes.
And Tenora blocked the field goal and ran it back and took, a 10-7 lead or 10-3 lead into the half. But yeah, Paulding, we were impressed when we left.
They're a team that, they're ones that you cannot take lightly. You get into the conference schedule, your team's at the top, they're going to have to watch out for Paulding because they could be one to play upset throughout the entire year. So they're definitely one of the teams. And one of the other two, the second team I had in mind will be coming up here shortly too. So let's move on to the next team. Looking at Tenora Rams, this is a team that we know better than any others. Following them all year long with Tenora Rams Live. Last year's record, they went 8-4. They had a lot of adversity, but they really kind of bounced back. Was very impressed with the kids, the way they responded. This year, again, they have a new coach, Coach Eric Becker. He's first-year head coach, but he's spent the last 4 seasons as assistant. So, the kids know him. I think the kids are really buying in as well, which I think is always critical when you're a new head coach. But there's going to be, some changes. We've seen that already, and I think this year, it'll be exciting to see the Rams. So, what are your guys' thoughts?
For me, we watched their scrimmage last Friday, and I just got to say, I was, been telling everybody, I'm pleasantly surprised. They looked very, very well rounded. I think they played well. Things looked good, and I think there's a lot of possibilities there. But again, you're looking at the schedule unfortunately for Coach Becker, his first season as coach. He's Liberty Center, Otsego, Archbold. So
and we've said that's probably one of the toughest non-conference in the area.
But we said that same thing last year about Tenora. Coming out, they played Liberty Center, Wauseon, and LCC. And said they
took 2 of the 3 of those.
Yeah, took 2 out of the 3. So you never know here either. So, but 2 out of the 3 or 2 out of those first 3 games are at home. So, we'll see what happens.
Yep. Yeah, and it's with that scrimmage we watched, their offense was able to kind of do whatever they wanted to with the ball. Really, they were moving the ball like it was nothing. They did struggle once they got into the red zone a little bit. Had some turnovers, some penalties that kind of pulled them back out of it, things like that. But they looked good all over the place. And with Graziani as quarterback this year, they've got a pretty good quarterback sitting there. That's a good pass-oriented quarterback, and it looks like they're going to start utilizing that a bit more.
Yep, I think you guys hit everything on the head. If the Rams started 1-4, would anybody really be surprised? No. But then again, we thought the same thing last year, as you guys pointed out. You lose the entire running back. I think we graduated 4.
Right.
You got 2 new kids coming in that really haven't carried the ball much at all, probably since junior high. Got your Owen Ackerman could be a difference maker on offense, just for his leaping ability alone. Obviously, the strength of the Rams is going to be their defense and their linebacking core and defensive backfield. We may not get a lot of pressure on the quarterback as we have in years past, but the linebacking core and I think our defensive backs are pretty solid.
Yeah.
So that will probably be the key to where the Rams are through the first 4 weeks is wherever the defense is at is probably going to lead you to maybe a win or two.
Yeah,
I was just going to touch on that's a great point, Keith. That back half of the Tenor defense, they can go out there and they'll compete with anyone. They bring back a lot of experience. You got guys like Caden Radzik. He had 39 tackles, 2 interceptions, and he had a touchdown. Carter Gilliam, 43 tackles, 2 interceptions. Even Dominic Graziani playing some defensive back had 5 picks last year. So they have a lot of experience there. And then we talk about the linebackers all the time in Gus Weiler, Geisinger, and Rostai. Arguably probably the best linebacker core, in Northwest Ohio. So, they have some big expectations to fill this year. And I think, with some changes on offense, that defense is really going to have to take hold, and they're going to have to, buckle up to kind of allow that offense to develop as the year goes on.
Yeah, and I think like a weapon that we know we have, and probably other schools as well. You got Jacob Bishop back there as a kicker and a punter. And as far as kickoffs as well, I mean, field position alone this year is definitely going to be something that Jacob can control.
Yeah,
so
I think I honestly have a feeling this year he's going to kick a game-winning field goal in one of these games. So just keep your eye out for that.
Yep. And that's something too. Not many teams around anymore really have a true kicker. You see less and less. Actually kicking extra points, you see more going for 2, and to really have a kicker and to have that extra threat. For instance, look at Tenora game. A couple years ago they lost to Liberty Center on a last-second field goal. I believe it was it Wes Weimer?
Yes, Weimer, yes.
That dude had ice in his veins. They iced him, I think, twice. And they had a penalty, got moved back, and this kid nailed a 40-yard field goal to win that game. So it's incredible what special teams can do for you.
I mean, Liberty Center won the playoff game by the special teams too, right?
Yeah.
So, and you talking about not having a kicker, I remember years ago, back before your guys' playing time, when Fairview had the big teams, and they would always win for 2 because they didn't have anybody can kick the ball.
And
they ended up losing a game because of that, because they had to keep going for 2 and kept getting stuffed.
All right, last team of the GMC here, looking at Wayne Trace, and this, guys, is the last team of my teams that can play upsetter in the GMC. I think they're ones that you should not play with this season. We saw them play last year. They played teams tough. They upset a couple teams. And you look, half of the losses the Raiders had last season, their defense only gave up 12, 13, and 14 points. And they ended up only losing to Edgerton by 1 point. So if they can really step up that offense this year, which I think they will, they got a quarterback competition going on. I believe Cooper Wenslick's kind of getting back there, and she's a great athlete over there in Wayne Trace. I think they can do some big things this year and, have a pretty good record and season overall. So your guys' thoughts on the Raiders?
The Raiders was one of those teams last year that we kept looking at. You see the scores, and then the second half would kind of get away from, or it was a fumble or a blocked punt. If you guys remember, all that stuff happened last year. Right. They blocked a punt against Tenora and took it in for a score. So, it was always, they were always doing something to try to stay in the game. And, that's what we always talk about. Keep yourself in a position to win. And they seemed like Wayne Trace was kind of there from week to week, but just couldn't close the door.
Yeah, that was a team that we talked about going over to their field was like turnover central.
Yep.
They always were causing turnovers, whether it was fumbles or interceptions or blocked punts or something that was game changing. They just were never really able to make the most of it. But I think this year is going to be where they start to capitalize on some of those things a little bit. And like you said, Logan, this is another one of those teams where I don't know that they contend for top of the GMC, but they're definitely the ones that will do the damage to the GMC.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll find out week 2 when they play PH. But I think last year was like Wayne Trace was in a lot of games. They just, on offense, they always seem to have a turnover at the wrong time.
Right.
And then they did play better as the season progressed. And I believe they actually knocked off Ayersville in the last couple weeks to kind of propel them into that playoff burst. So,
yeah. AJ, you mentioned the fumbles. They said Logan's got 29 fumbles, 6 interceptions. It's a lot of turnovers for a team. Obviously, that you kind of think that maybe a little bit that they teach that, to rip at that ball as you get the guy stood up. So,
yeah, and just a couple other points. Looking on offense, they returned 4 starting offensive linemen. They definitely got to develop, the running game a little bit. We talk about teams at least having a threat. you don't necessarily have to be balanced, but at least have like a quality, efficient running game. Last season, they only averaged 2.9 yards a carry on the ground. That's got to improve if they want to see more success, especially with scoring some more points on the offensive side of the ball. So, like I said, Wayne Trace Raiders are one. Teams got to keep an eye out for and do not take lightly because they will make you pay. So, all right. Well, that concludes the GMC. We're going to take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors.
3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign and promotional items to customers in Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archbold, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat & Stevens Body Shop. Voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Tenora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on tenorarams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio, call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment.
We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast. Moving on with the conferences here, we're on the Northwest Ohio Athletic League. We'll kick this thing off here. Starting off with Archbold. Archbold had a pretty successful season last year, went 8-3, had a playoff berth. They got knocked out of the first round by Liberty Benton. But anyways, this year's a new year. Very experienced, one of the most experienced teams in the NWOAL. They have 14 returning starters, 13 seniors, and 1 junior. And I think that's really going to play to their advantage this entire season. One big piece, looking at that's just kind of glaring is the loss of their second-team All-Ohio running back in Carson Dominic. He's been a staple in that offense for the last couple of years. 1,475 rushing yards, 225 carries, and 26 rushing touchdowns. So that accounted for 63% of Archbold's rushes and 80% of the team's rushing yards. So really got to find out that next running back who's going to step into those shoes. But they do bring back senior quarterback Cade Brenner. He was honorable mention NWOAL, very solid quarterback, and I think he only gets better coming up in this season. So, thoughts on Archbold here?
I think Archbold is going to be a contender. Of course, you look at the NWOAL; it's always tough. Liberty Center is always going to be the talk of the town, but like you said, they got a lot of returners coming back. So I think I think it's going to be a battle when you see Liberty Center and Archbold play.
I think a lot of it's going to depend. This goes for the entire NWOAL is who stays healthy. Everybody's going to be a contender for the conference title as long as they can maintain the player count and stay healthy. But as long as they stay healthy and compete, they have a good shot at it.
Yeah, I think this could actually be a breakout year for Cade Brenner. Myself, had a heck of a year last year with a running. Dominated offense. Still threw for over 2,000 yards, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I guess kind of a double-edged sword. You look at the double-edged sword. You look at the league schedule, and you start your league play with Liberty Center.
Yeah.
So I guess you kind of know where you are right off the bat. If you suffer a league loss, you have time to recover. Kind of hope somebody else kind of jumps in and then knocks off Liberty Center, but. Your first league game could be the tail of the rest of your season.
Right. And I think, too, looking at the NWOAL from an outside looking in, I think Liberty Center still got the X on their team because, they've been dominating the NWOAL the past couple of years. But I think the two teams in the NWOAL that are going to have a possibility of competing for a championship, Archbold, I think, is one of them. I think PH is the other one. So definitely got to watch out for Archbold. Also bringing in one of the larger and more athletic offensive lines, very veteran up front. They have center Brian Burrows, first team NWOAL, guard Mason Siegel, first team NWOAL, another guard Wyatt Ripke, second team NWOAL. So you have 3 all-conference players up front that'll be leading the way. Defensive line, same thing. That's going to be their strength up front. And I think that's really going to help them out. So defense again, too, they have some really good defensive backs. Chase Miller was an All-Ohio third-team player. He had 4 interceptions last year. Have another couple other good guys back there, but I think Archbold will be in good shape this year, and they'll do some big things.
And a special thanks for Coach Dominic for stopping over. I mean, heck of a coach.
Yeah,
he's entering his 9th season. Looked like he's about 25 years old. You can start coaching when you're 18.
Yeah.
And you look at his overall record, he's 64-24 in his 9th season. That's
Coach Dominic's an awesome guy. Appreciate seeing him out at the show. So it's always good talking to him. So
I think Archbold's key is going to be the defense, Logan, as you brought it up. But with losing Carson Dominic, I think it's going to be huge offensively, and they're going to have to. I think it's going to take them a few games to get something established on that offensive side there. So I think the defense is going to have to help hold them in those first few games.
All right, let's move on to the next team here. Looking at the Bryan Golden Bears, another coach that stopped out, Grant Redhead. We thank him. Man, oh man, I saw more pictures, and the facility is all done. The turf is done at least. That is a phenomenal facility. What did Coach say that they raised? How much money?
I believe he said it was $2.5 million
in like 3 months.
Yes.
That is unbelievable. So I mean, that just goes to show how supportive of a community Bryan is in general. And wow, that's going to be one of the better facilities in Northwest Ohio.
And I hope they go out and support them. I mean, you pour that kind of money in the facility. I mean, it's going to get people to go out there. I mean, they had a beautiful venue anyway.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
But to turn that field into turf, I'm sure it's just absolutely phenomenal.
And we talked to Coach. Bryan's going to have some key players too. I feel like Bryan is almost that kind of comparison. Wayne Trace and the GMC.
Absolutely. Yep.
They're a team that they're going to go out there and compete every night, and they're ones that you have to take seriously because they've got, like Coach said, 2 of the bigger running backs in the area, led by Sam Harold. Last season, 126 carries, 796 rushing yards, 6.3 yards a carry, 9 rushing touchdowns. He's only going to get better this year. Again, quarterback Jace Kepler. He's an honorable mention NWOAL player. He's a dual threat. He can burn you in the pass game. He can burn you in the run game. So I think that will really keep defenses on edge as well. Defensive wise, I think that's where they got to pick it up. You look at it, they gave up 28 points per game. And I think if they do that, they'll be in good shape. If they can cut that down in about half, they lose some guys to graduation, but those linebackers and secondary are going to be the strength. So what are you guys' thoughts on Bryan?
I think you just said it. The defense is going to have to pick up. They stopped you look at the averages. Defense gave up 28, and they only averaged 27 scoring on the offense side. So obviously that doesn't fare out too well in the end. But I believe bringing back Chase Kepler and Sam Harold is going to be strong on the offensive side. But again, defensively, it doesn't matter how many points you score if you can't stop the other team.
And that's nothing against you, Coach Redhead. As he said, the offensive side of the ball is the communist side of the ball. And I have laughed since that. That was probably the funniest statement I've ever heard. So he calls the defensive side, and so he refers to the offense as the communist side. So I had to crack up about that. But, man, that was awesome. Keith, AJ.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Bryan 6-5 last year actually could surprise a few people this year. I mean, if Bryan went 7-4, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked one bit. Got Jace Kepler, dual threat quarterback coming back. Got your running back coming back. And again, just playing at home at that facilities, like you guys said earlier, I mean, that's bring out some extra fans. That's going to pump you up a little bit.
We've talked too about, even getting the fans engaged in the games, and that's why I offered too to try to help run like pregame music out at Tenor, because I want to see fans get up and get excited. You can feel that energy as a player. If you have fans pregame, that are sitting down, they're on their phones and stuff, that it just drains you. But if you see the whole entire stadium, they're up, they're cheering pregame, they're getting you hyped. There's some good music rolling. That that in itself can be an X factor. You have two teams that are, looking at head-to-head matchups, they're pretty equal. That home field advantage, that can play a big difference. So, especially with Bryan's facility, those fans get out there and support them. Bryan will shock some people. And they did last year at home too as well. So let's move on to the next team. Looking at Delta. Last year they went 5-6. They did make the playoffs, but they ended up losing in round 1 to Elmwood 24-49. It was actually the first non-winning season since 2015 for Delta, which I thought that was kind of interesting as well. So they'll be young this year. They're only returning 9 lettermen. They lose most of their offensive production from last season. One of those being first-team NWOAL running back Jeremiah Wolford. He put up a lot of rushing yards for those guys. Very run-heavy offense, so if they're missing their top contributor, they're going to be down a little bit this year. But what are your guys' thoughts on Delta overall?
You said it, Logan. Just losing Jeremiah Wolford, he was pretty much their their staple in the backfield. So, you never know. Delta's one of those teams again. I think that's can step up and maybe shock somebody at time to time. But we'll see how they develop as the season goes on. I mean, they got Ayersville and Fairview at the beginning, and again, that'll kind of help us figure out where Ayersville and Fairview are at. Mm-hmm. So, who knows?
Well, kind of looking back at their schedule last year too, they started off 5-2, which is a pretty solid record to start out with. But then they got into the heart of the conference with Wauseon, Patrick Henry, Liberty Center, and kind of, suffered a pretty big hit there and lost big against some of those teams. So, they're the team that's going to have fun playing while they're out there in those earlier games, but they're going to struggle when they start getting beat up by the big ones, by Liberty Center and even Archbold, which they lost 43-0 last year. So they're going to come out this year with something to prove. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think to me, Delta's kind of in the same boat as Edgerton. Had a lot of graduation on both sides of the ball, and probably be a little rebuilding season for Delta. Coming off a decent season last year, nonetheless.
Right. They got a couple studs on defense, too. They're led on defense by second-team NWOAL linebacker Justin Ruppel. 121 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 2 touchdowns that were returned. So that's pretty impressive. And then they have defensive end Maverick Mercer. He was also second-team NWOAL nominee. 13 sacks, 62 tackles, and 18 tackles for loss. And he was one of the sack leaders in Northwest Ohio. So those two guys are really going to have to take a hold. They can put pressure on the opposing team's quarterbacks, especially with, you do have some quality quarterbacks in the NWOL, especially with Nash Meyer from Patrick Henry and things like that. You got to shut down the passing game. So it's going to be critical that he gets back there and he causes some ruckus. So let's move on to the next team. Looking at Evergreen. Last year's record, 3-7. Got a new coach this year. This is the third new coach in 3 years for Evergreen.
I was going to say, it's a brand new coach. We talked about how the other coach, and then
and that's, I talked to Coach Karchner before too, and he made it clear that Evergreen was never his final destination. His final destination he wanted to get to was Maumee. That's where he played at, and that's where he's at this year. So I think he'll do well. I think he was doing big things with Evergreen last year. They got 3 wins. But again, it's just hard as a program to find stability when you have so many changes. And, last year, I didn't realize, I kind of forgot about it, but they finished 17th in the region, and they were 1 spot out of the playoffs in Division 6 Region 22. So,
what?
Right. Wow. I kind of forgot about that, honestly.
Wow.
With 16 teams making it now, and you beat the right teams. I mean, that puts you up there in points. So, going 3-7, they almost made the playoffs, which that would have been huge for the program.
But again, it's tough playing in that NWOAL.
It is.
Talk about it. you're looking at, you got Wauseon, Patrick Henry, Archbold, Liberty Center, Bryan's, always hangs in there tough. And they're bigger schools, a little bit bigger than what you guys are. So that always helps a little bit too. But gee whiz.
Evergreen does, looking at a couple things, offensive wise, production last year, 19.5 points per game. That's not bad. But they do bring back a majority of skilled players from last season and that have experience. They have wide receiver Riley Dunbar. He's a 6'5", 190-pound wide receiver. He was first-team NWOAL, 42 receptions, 428 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. They bring back their starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, and Hunter Valkulik. He had a season-ending injury, unfortunately, last season, but at least he's back, and they're deep at the wide receiver position. So, again, they've got some experience this year, so that's good to see compared to some of the other teams in the NWOAL. Defensive-wise, what are you guys thinking for Evergreen?
Go Diesel, vroom.
I forgot about Diesel.
Yes.
I think Evergreen, obviously new coach, you don't know what to expect necessarily, but again, like I said earlier, just with all these new coaches, I hope these kids are embracing them and just taking them under, and seeing what they can do for you. Don't go in there with a chip on your shoulder because you got a new coach. I had a new coach my senior year in high school, and we had a great season. So just take it and do your best.
One quick point though, what an unusual time in football in general. There was a time, even go back 10, 15 years ago, every coach around the area had at least probably at least 5 to 10 years of experience.
Right.
Now it's this coach goes here, this coach goes there. There's so much change. And that's the same at the college level too. Guys are jumping and going all the time. It's crazy. You don't see those long tenured coaches like you once did. So, it's just weird the way that football in general is shifting. So
it's unfortunate for the sport, I think.
It's like the transfer portal for coaches.
Right.
I just honestly, I think it's unfortunate that coaches are kind of getting into the same mentality that we talk about the kids having, that microwave mentality. Got to have it right now. Got to do this, and to me, that's disappointing for the sport. And we can talk about this all day long, but I'm not going to get into it now. But like with what's going on with the Big Ten and Pac-12, that's disappointing for the sport, in my opinion.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the next team here. Looking at Liberty Center, Coach Casey Moeller was another coach that stopped out. We thank him for coming out. Had some really good talks with him, and talk about a winning culture over there. And AJ asked him about it, and that school over there lives, breathes, and dies football. I mean, we drove by the other day, and my wife's grandparents live out just outside of Liberty Center. We drive through town, and you see this entire stadium that's built for football, and they just keep doing things to improve it. Then you get to the north side of town, and no offense to like the other programs like the track and baseball and softball fields, but there's a world of difference. Where all the money and all the attention is going in that city, and it's football. So what are you guys' thoughts on Liberty Center going in this year?
Coach Mueller does a great job over there. And, the one thing that he did say is that, you mentioned, Logan, that they're a football town. What else are you going to do in Liberty Center on a Friday night, right? I mean, but, the other thing that he stated, I think it was him that stated, is that, they're a small school, so they have to share athletes. And that was the one thing that he said that kind of stuck with me. When you're from a small school, you can say Fairview, Sonora, Hicksville, all the smaller schools, you got to share athletes. And that's the one thing that he said. What do they got? What did he say? They had 68 kids out. Yep. I think it was. Archbold has 65 kids out. But when you got a small school, you got to share athletes, and obviously, however they're doing it in Liberty Center, they're doing it right. They got a lot of kids out for football, and they're getting better in a lot of the other sports as well. So, I look forward to watching Liberty Center this year. We followed them through the playoffs last year. They did a fantastic job. They got some great athletes back.
They're fun to watch. They do things the right way.
Yeah, they've lost a few athletes, but they're going to be fun to watch. And unfortunately, we get to watch them week 1 at Sonora, and we'll get to see what they've got this year.
Keith, AJ.
Yeah, I kind of asked Coach Mueller what a little bit about his culture, and I asked him what does it take to build that, and he kind of credited it back to the coaches that came before him, which is pretty cool, to be humble like that. But, that culture can also die very quickly under the wrong, mentality. And for him to be able to maintain that after he came into that role, they've got one of the greatest cultures surrounding football. When I was in school playing against them, that was the team I hated. That was my rival. I wanted to beat Liberty Center so bad, and we never actually pulled it off. And now that I'm on the other side of it, kind of watching them and seeing the culture, I'm like, man, I actually really like those guys. That's pretty cool what they can do over there. And it makes me really excited to see where they go this year.
Yeah, very envious culture. I mean, we talked about all last year, that's my shirt, Friday Night Lights. We've kind of compared it to that, just everything. You got tiger prints in the streets leading to the school. Everybody comes out on Friday night, and he talked about putting blankets down. Like he's going to school, walking into the school at 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, and people already have their blankets ready for the game Friday night. Yeah. It's just amazing, but interesting. Like getting back on the field, anytime you lose like a leader that Liberty Center lost last year in their quarterback,
Zane Zider,
yes, and Owen Box on defense. It's probably a little bit of an adjustment period because you got a leader on defense and a leader on offense, so you lost both of them. But you got the Cruz triplets coming back, which is going to help out your loss of Zider on offense. But interesting to see, which we'll see in a couple of nights, what Liberty Center has on offense.
And I think Landon Bachman will kind of slide right up into that role for Box there too. Coming in at 6'3" and like 260 pounds, and it's a lean 260. He's a force to be reckoned with. Yep. So he'll slide into that role. Then you got Seth Navarre.
There's another name to watch for.
Yep. So it's Liberty Center's got that rotation of players. Yep. It's not like one season they've got everything as their senior class. They're turning over a few key players at a time, but they're always got somebody coming in behind them.
Yeah, I don't think Liberty, when you play Liberty Center, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get old school 80s smash mouth football. They're not going to outflash you. You're just going to have to stop them. And Coach Moeller just going to pound the hammer. Hey, stop us. I mean, everybody knows it going into the game.
I think, too, they find out their quarterback this year, someone who can be a leader. Obviously, we know Liberty Center doesn't throw the ball all that much.
Right.
But you need that guy to have that presence on the offensive side of the ball and the team in general. I think they'll fit just fine, manage the game. Liberty's definitely the team to beat in the NWOAL. Let's move on to the next team here. Looking at Swanton. Again, another one of those teams. They were 1-9 last season. Coach Eric Keller is trying to turn that program around. They lose 8 starters overall. But sounds like coach is pretty pleased with things. They only won 1 game, but they're trying to establish a good coaching staff. Their numbers are improving in the program. And they're continuing to do the little things, kind of we talked about with Fairview, trying to build that program up towards the right way, developing those good habits, things like that. But again, I think this year they still have kind of a rough time. Last season, offense did score 100 points. The year before they only scored 41. So, I mean, you're doubling your production on offense. Yep. I just think it's still gonna. They're a few years out before being truly competitive. So, what are your guys' thoughts here?
You mentioned that you got a quote down here from Coach Keller where they were able to establish a coaching staff and their numbers improved and changing the players' attitudes, and going back to what Coach Cooper said at Defiance. That's what it's about. A lot of times, if you can get them, to decide that it's going to be a winning program and they get the kids to buy into it. That's 50% of the battle right there, just to get that. And if they can really buy into the program, you can see them turn around and maybe improve a lot more this year. But I'm like you, Logan. I think they're still at least a year away. They're going to have to get the numbers up a little bit more and then try to get that program rolling.
Yeah, and you look to turnovers. They average 2 turnovers a game. We talk about too how critical it is to win the turnover battle. Yep. If you're losing that battle, I think I said. In college, they had some kind of statistic. I don't know. They ran analytics in the NFL for a season. And if you lost the turnover battle, you're like guaranteed to lose the game like 70, 80%. So it was pretty significant if you lost the turnover battle. Keith, AJ, any comments here?
Nope. I think you guys kind of said it all.
Yeah, non-conference schedule. I mean, you look at it on paper, you could get out of there with a win or 2 before the league starts.
Yeah, so, at least they're non-conference. It's competitive. Yep. There's some teams that they can kind of match up to, and possibly go out there. May not even get a win, but at least they're going out there competing. Yeah. They're keeping things close. Heading in that right direction. So.
We got a long drive, the first one from Swanton to Paulding. That's going to be a pretty good haul.
It is a long drive. Jeez, I guess I didn't even think about that.
I saw Paulding and Hicksville. I'm like, well, at least one of those are home. So, geez.
Right, yeah. I don't know how long. You think that's hour plus?
Oh, it'd be an hour and 45 minutes probably.
Yeah.
I would bet.
Let's move on. Next team here, Patrick Henry. Again, another team that's going to be there at the top of the NWOAL. They're reloaded this year. They have a lot coming back. They went 7-5 last year. They won first round of playoffs against a really good Ottawa Hills team. They played an Ashland Crestview team tough and lost in the second round. But they returned 10 starters this season. Coach Inselman, always as an innovator. Like I said too, like last year, they're kind of switching to this West Coast passing offense. They don't play with a tight end on the ball. This year, he's going back to it. So always adapting to his personnel and players. I love that about a coach. I kind of said it when the coaches came on. I said, there's not many coaches in the area that could do that. You run an offense for 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden you're going to change your offense. There's not many coaches that will do that, but he understands the personnel he has. He understands the situation, and he understands what he needs to do to put his coach in the best, or put his team in the best position to win football games. So that's what I love about Coach I. Keith, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, he's which every time we have Coach I on here or we talk to him, he's just one of those coaches you could just sit down and talk hours and hours and hours and hours to, and before you know it, 5 hours have gone by, and it feels like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just, and congratulations to him. Didn't he say he just retired as well?
Yeah,
retired as a
40
teacher.
years. 40 years.
So congratulations, Coach. That's amazing. 40 years.
Yeah, so now he's got all this time to think about football.
That's right.
So you think it only gets better. For me, with PH, they open up with Hicksville, and then they have Wayne Trace, and I think it's going to be the third game against Columbus Grove before they see a true test, with Nash Meyer coming back, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be slinging the ball maybe quite as much as he did last year. Who knows? That's this kind of the way Coach handed it when he talked to us last week. But so we'll see. We'll see what the PH comes back with this year as kind of their identity.
I think Coach says that, and I understand you got to run the ball a little bit more to be balanced. But when you got a first team All Ohio wide receiver in Landon Johnson, there's no joking around. They're going to be making that connection every game. So definitely. Defensive wise, real quick looking, they bring back a really good athlete in Grant Smith. He was just a freshman last year, and he was already a second team NWAL. That's impressive in itself. But he was second in the area in sacks with 13 as a freshman. So talking about a kid that's just going to get better and better as the years go on. So really awesome to see him on the defense for Patrick Henry.
Is that kid big? Is he a big kid?
I don't know. I'd be curious to look at height and weight.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I'll have to find that out. But return linebacker Houston Miranda, again, he's going to get some touches, running the ball on the offensive side. He's a first-team NWL linebacker, 103 tackles, 11 tackles for loss last year, 2 sacks. So I think if they can get their back end, some of their defensive backs and stuff up to par, I think that defense will be all right too. But again, the offense is going to be the bread and butter of that team this year. Let's move on to the next team, Wauseon. Last year they went 6-5. They lost first round of playoffs to Van Wert. They ended up losing that game 7-40. This is the 4th season under Coach Sean Moore. They're 30-14, but they've had 4 consecutive winning seasons. Last year you look at things, and it was kind of an up and down roller coaster for them. They ended the year with 3 losses consecutively. And they lose 10 starters on each side of the ball. So there's some questions there and some voids that they're going to have to find out and be filled. 2 really big voids that they've had production year after year after year. And I feel like these 2 guys have been at Wauseon forever. And that's Jude Armstrong and Sam Smith. I feel like those guys, and I think they've been at least playing since they've been sophomores. And I don't know, even possibly freshmen. Yeah. But you look, Sam Smith's now at Toledo. He's playing football there. He had 45 receptions, 543 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. And Jude Armstrong, 68 receptions, 624 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, both first team NWL. So that's a big hit on offense. But I'll let you guys kind of talk about the rest. What are you guys thinking on the Wauseon Indians?
I see they're going to bring back Trey Parsons as their quarterback, and that was kind of a switch they made
mid-season.
Mid-season last year. That just wasn't working the other way, and they brought him in. And then, like you said, Logan, at the end of the year, they suffered those 3 losses. But I definitely think they have the potential again to be good. And but once again, they're playing in the NWOAL, so it's going to be tough.
Yeah, that's kind of really the point is NWOAL. You don't really know where a team like Wauseon's going to fall just because it's going to be tough, either way you look at it. So see where they end up in, even middle of the season, see where they're at, kind of get a grip of where, what kind of team they are.
They do have experience coming back, like you guys pointed out. If you have a quarterback, Trey Parsons and Tyson Rodriguez coming back, who does have experience, I mean, that's a huge help. So, but again, 6-5 last year, and their last 3 games, Archibald, Bryan, Liberty Center.
The trenches is where it's really going to get kind of iffy because, they lose their entire offensive line and defensive line to graduation. So you got a couple guys on defensive side too. Austin Kovar returns at linebacker. That will help him out. He's a second team NWL selection. Tyson Rodriguez again. Tyson Rodriguez is just an excellent overall athlete, both sides of the ball and even special teams. But they're going to really have to rely on those guys. I think the offense is, again, they're going to have to try to really pull this team forward. They got a couple threats there, but they really got to figure out the what's going on in the trenches and get those guys up to par quick, because you got a lot of experienced offensive lines and defensive lines in the NWOAL. We keep talking about all these athletes, from Liberty Center, from Archbold in the trenches. We just talk about Grant Smith from PH, who was a freshman having 13 sacks. You can't tell me that he's not going to get better this year. So they're going to have their challenges facing some of these tough O-lines and D-lines in the NWOAL. So, if they get that, they figure out some of the line play, I think they'll have a decent season. So let's move on. Western Buckeye League here. Looking at the Defiance Bulldogs, Coach Travis Cooper came on the show. Great talking to him. It was kind of awesome to see, what's going on with the Bulldogs now. 7-5 last year. They made the playoffs and lost in the second round to Mansfield, 0-16. It was their first playoff win in 19 years, the most wins in 14 years. So excellent job. Look at Coach Coop. He was there. 2021, they went 3-7. Last year, they went 7-5. So we see things trending in the right direction. So that's good to see. What are your guys' thoughts on the Bulldogs here?
My thoughts on the Bulldogs is, first off, I think I want to apologize, because last year I told Defiance only way Defiance was going to host a playoff game was if it was holding a Division 7 game there. But congrats to Defiance for being able to get themselves in the playoffs, and Coach Cooper's done a great job there turning that program around, get it moving, and as we talked to him last Friday, he's doing the right things there, I think, and they bring back a ton of talent, I think, with Brett Ziffel and Brogan Castile. I think this season's going to look up for them as well.
Yeah, you bring back your starting quarterback and your starting running back. That's always awesome. But not only that, they're bringing back 4 starting offensive linemen. I think some of that they'll have to develop. I think that's kind of the weak point is their O-line and D-line. If they can kind of develop that they'll be good. But they're loaded at the skilled position this year. Keith, AJ?
Yeah, I was kind of trying to look back here. I think they were only... I think if they would have beat Van Wert in the final game, if I'm remembering their schedule right, they would have actually hosted the playoff game. So yeah, they were right there. All they had to do is get that one more win. But then again, it was Van Wert, which was a very powerful team last year. So it's going to be fun to watch them continue to develop this year and see how far they can get in the playoffs this time.
Yeah, it was great talking to Coach Cooper, and probably if you go back and watch some of our podcasts from last year, outside of the Rams, I don't think there was anybody that pulled for Defiance more than we did last year, honestly. And you look at their schedule; they play 4 of their first 5 games are home. So
wow,
that's pretty huge.
Yeah,
it really is. But then again, you're back into your schedule, and especially in WBL, you got some of those long bus trips. But Bulldogs would get off to a pretty good start. So
yeah, just a couple other points want to make. Last year, big thing that kind of hurt the Bulldogs, they kind of struggled down in the red zone and on third down efficiency, which I believe was 32.6%. If they can really kind of, make those big plays when they need them, I think that's what's going to be enough to put them over the edge, to beat some of these WBL teams. Because, you talk about tough conferences in the state. First one comes to mind is the MAC. Second one, WBL. That's always competitive. You look at those teams at the top. You always have Van Wert, you always have Wapakoneta. St. Mary's is always quality, and then you got a bunch of teams in the middle of the pack. So usually, and throwing out an outlier, usually OG's up there too. They had kind of an off season, which we'll get into. But again, if Defiance can take a couple of those, I think they'll be competitive and they could be towards the top of the WBL this season.
Agreed. I want to correct myself real quick. It was Wapak that they lost to in I think week 9, which was again very, very good team last year. So just wanted to correct that.
Logan, real quick, you brought up the third down efficiency, and it's all about being manageable, right? So if you got to have third and shorts, and if you're not moving the ball on first and second down, then that third down becomes even harder. So if they can get some yardage in the first couple downs, I think you'll see that improve. At least I hope they will.
Let's move on to the next team here. WBL, looking at Ottawa Glandorf. Again, I kind of just referred to them. Went 2-8 last season. A little bit of a down year for them. Obviously, Ottawa Glandorf is always known to have great football teams. Head coach Ken Schreiner, he's been there 27 years. He's actually 2 wins shy of 200 wins, which that's really impressive. And last season was just the 5th time in his whole career that he's had a losing season. So, that tells you enough right there. I think this year, though, they're still going to have some troubles. I don't think... And we talked about it before, schools go through those periods where they go up and down. I think Ottawa Glandorf is just in kind of one of those down periods right now. They returned 6 starters on offense. They returned 4 on defense. So, again, they're going to be kind of young, and they're going to lack some size and experience up front. But what are your guys' thoughts on OG this year?
Well, for me, last year, didn't they have their starting quarterback that didn't play? Decided not to play, didn't play basketball, right?
Oh, Colin White. He was a good wide receiver. And
okay.
I believe played defensive back, but still.
Yeah, quality player didn't play. And, that kind of hurts, teams, and it can lead to some turmoil internal. But, we'll see how they return. And if he's been there for 27 years, he's got almost 200 wins. He knows how to win ball games. He'll get him back on track.
Yep.
Real quick note, actually, Colin White, you're an Ohio State fan, right? He committed to Ohio State Buckeyes for basketball. So.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. Keith was texting me the link, and I tuned in and watched it. And I figured he would, but that's awesome that local kids going to Ohio State. So, and I'm a Michigan fan too, but it's still cool to see him go there. So, Tony, AJ, Keith.
Nope.
Yeah, because you talk about stability. I mean, you're there 27 years, obviously. You've already built a foundation. Just need the athletes to, like you said, classes go in waves. Sometimes you just have a couple down years where you don't have the talent that you need. So.
All right, let's move on. Next team. Looking at Van Wert here. Last year, what a season by Van Wert. But last season, they went 12-2, made the playoffs. They played Glenville tough, which Glenville, for being a Division IV team, is one of the best teams in the state. Again, Glenville will probably be one of the best. If not, they'll probably win state again this year. But anyways, Coach Keith Recker's been there, 35 wins over the last 3 years, 1 state championship, 2 regional runners-ups. Talking about another program that knows how to win. And, this year, there's going to be, a couple big questions. They're losing Aiden Pratt. He went to the University of Findlay. He's now playing football there. Had a lot of production over the last couple of years. So they're actually moving running back from last season, Brylan Parker, who was an all-state running back. They're putting him at quarterback this season. So I think that'll be kind of interesting to see where things go with that. But again, sometimes you got to make changes. Maybe you don't have that true passing threat, but you want to put an athlete back there that can make plays. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and I think Coach Keith Recker's onto something. He may not have that passing threat, but he knows Brylan Parker can be back there. He can control the offense and kind of go from there. So they returned 4 starters on offense. They returned 7 starters on defense. So what are your thoughts on the Cougars?
Go ahead, Keith.
It's almost similar to who's the team Liberty Center played in the playoffs, or maybe it was Antwerp. Like the team threw for 50 attempts for the entire season. It's almost like
it was probably Gibsonburg.
Yeah.
They had that running back.
Right.
He was one of the top rushers in the nation. Actually, he went to the University of Findlay too. I can't think of his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
But to move an all-Ohio running back to quarterback, I guess you can kind of read between the lines of kind of what your offense is going to be this year.
I'm thinking the same thing.
But Van Wert really never has a down season. Coach Recker has a great program over there. So,
yeah, obviously 35 wins in 3 years. Yeah. He knows what he's doing.
I think many coaches would probably take that. So, in programs. So, AJ, any thoughts?
Nope, don't got anything.
Just a couple other points. They'll be strong in the defensive backfield. They're led by Reese Crew. He's an honorable mention WBL last season, had 5 picks. So very impressive there. They lose a couple other points to note. They do lose second-team All-Ohio wide receiver Maddox Crutchfield to graduation. They lose 3 offensive linemen. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that transition for Brylan Parker works. He's a stud athlete, but again, quarterback's a whole nother beast than running back. So we'll be curious to see how things play out. Nonetheless, I think they'll have a good season. I don't know if you'll be used to like what they've had, regional final bursts, stuff like that. But I think they'll go out and they'll do Van Wert things. So let's move on. Northern Lakes League. Let's look at the Napoleon Wildcats. Coach Swery stopped out, so we thank him. Good talking to him. Last year record 4-7. This is actually 2023 is Coach Swery's second season as head coach, but it's the first full season he's actually got because last year kind of got thrown into things. It was kind of late start, and we discussed that with him Friday. But looking, they return 8 starters on offense, return 5 starters on defense, and they ran the ball a lot last year. And actually, they ran out of 583 plays. They ran the ball 448 times, 77%. And, they're without, I think he's probably got to be AJ's favorite player, Andrew Williams. I feel like you were always talking about him last year. So they lose a big weapon on offense. But they got some guys. Henry Eggers on defense, too. He was a second-team NLL player. Jacob Aguilar, second-team NLL. So they'll be leading on defense. But what are your guys' thoughts on Napoleon this season?
For me, Napoleon, I think it all weighs on the first game. If they can knock off Defiance, and that'll be huge for them, and that could set the stage for the way some of the season goes. But unfortunately, Napoleon plays in that Northern Lakes League with all those big schools.
Right.
I just don't know how they're going to match up. But big offensive line. I mean, everybody in there is over 200 pounds. 285, 260, 240, which is why they probably ran the ball so well last year. And I know when we talked to Coach Swery, he mentioned, like when Wolf got hurt, the quarterback got hurt, that, you kind of got to go with what you had, and that was running the ball.
Right.
So, so we'll see if they continue down that path of running the ball that much, or they're going to start, you're going to see a more balanced attack.
Well, the good thing is, too, with a big offensive line like that, it's a lot harder to move. So if they are dropping in the pass coverage or pass protection, it's a lot harder to get past somebody like that, as long as they can move well. But, Napoleon's going to be one of those teams you're going to have to see after the Defiance game this Thursday where they're going to match up. And even if they come away with a loss, as long as they compete strong, Defiance is a good team.
Yeah.
So, you're going to see what they're made of when they play Defiance.
Yeah.
And Keith, I think you should kind of go. I mean, you asked the coaches, what does the Rock mean to them? And you talked to them. I mean,
yes.
you heard how much it means.
Yeah, that was like winning a playoff game. Probably better, actually. I mean, obviously you want to win a playoff game, but listen to both Cooper and Swery talk. I mean, that's something they covet.
Yeah.
Right? We want to take that back with us, or we want to keep that at home. But there's probably not a team in Ohio that probably has two rivalry games right off the bat like Napoleon does. Start off with Defiance, and by the way, week 2, you play Liberty Center.
Right.
So, yeah, 1 and 1A.
Yeah, and you talked to him
Right.
about maybe Friday night going over and watching the Liberty Center Sonora game to kind of do some scouting. But I tell you what, that's tough to opening 2 games.
Yeah, I think Napoleon will be on the uprise. Like I said, they had a full year to kind of prepare under Coach Swery. He's kind of getting things rolling where he envisions. I think they'll probably see some improvement this year, but I think they'll be on the uprise, as they continue to kind of work out some of the kinks along the way. So I think Napoleon will be in good hands with Coach Swery there. Yep. Let's look at a couple other teams here, just rounding out some of the previews. Look at the Northwest Conference. Looking at Columbus Grove, another team that had a phenomenal year last year. They went 12-3. They ended up losing to Marion Local and eventual state champs. They lost to them in the state semifinals, 0-27. But overall, head coach Andy Schaefer doing great things over there in Columbus Grove. It was the 3rd regional title in 11 seasons and the 2nd in the last 3. They didn't win the NWC title last year. They won the previous 4. But hey, I mean, if you make a state semifinal berth and don't win the conference championship, kudos to whoever won the conference. I think it was Allen East that ended up winning. But very impressive by Columbus Grove. Looking at a couple things, returning 8 starters on offense, returning 5 on defense. They got hit hard by graduation, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They lost, and I'll say it right now, the best linebacker core in the area last year was Tad Cook, AJ Schaefer, and Landon Schroeder. Cook was first team All-Ohio. AJ Schaefer was second team All-Ohio. Landon Schroeder, and they all had over 100 tackles. So I don't know I've ever really seen anything like that from one core or one personnel group. But they're going to have some answers that they're going to have to fill. They do bring back on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know how they do it. They bring back a quality running back every single year, and that's in Trenton Barraza, which they're going to have to really lean on. And he was just a sophomore last year, and he was an honorable mention All-Ohio player. 1,692 rushing yards on 240 carries, 15 rushing touchdowns, and he averaged 7.1 yards a carry, which... Ooh, that's impressive.
That's kind of wild. That was honorable mention All-Ohio with those kind of stats. It's like, what else did he go up against?
Well, the kid's just a sophomore, too.
Yeah, that was really his first year because Metzger was the running back.
Metzger, that was there forever. And they always have quality running backs year after year. So, And this year, I was doing some research and looked, and they're not going to have an H-back this year. And AJ Schaefer filled that position. He filled it well. I saw some highlights from him, and he would just knock the cleats off kids last year. And that's where they kind of talk about like the physicality. Like that Columbus Grove group was so physical last year. I don't know how you match that, but I think they're going to match that with some of the speed that they bring this year. So, you guys have any other thoughts for them?
Really, you have that kind of success in a program. You lose in the state semifinals. Just come back and more of the same. Just go through the season and play your games. And you mentioned that they didn't win the conference, but I'm being a coach myself. I always tell my softball players, it doesn't matter if you go 8-20. It's the last 8 games that matter. Yeah. Softball, there's more games, but it's those last ones that matter. All you can do is get into the playoffs. You get into the playoffs. That's all that matters from that point on. And they were a step away from being in that game. So,
yep. Let's move on. A couple other teams here. Looking at Toledo Area Athletic Conference. Let's look at Eden. Last year they went 5-6. They ended up making the playoffs. They lost to Macomb in the first round. Kind of a tough matchup there. But anyways, they're led by head coach Bob Olin. And I didn't realize this is his 45th season. I believe that's what it is. It's his 45th season. He's got 236 career wins, but man, he has been around for a long time. He's had a lot of success along the way. Eden's going to be led on offense by quarterback Kyler Sapp. He's a junior this year. Had a pretty good season last year. I think he'll continue to grow as the season goes on. And then they have wide receiver Max Radabaugh. I believe he kind of dealt with some injuries last year. I'm not certain, but I believe he did. But he'll be a nice asset for him. 31 catches, 510 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. And then looking on defense, they'll be led by linebacker and Cohen Halbert. He is one of the leading tacklers in the area with 127. But what are your guys' thoughts on the Bombers here?
Don't really got much.
Yeah, anytime you got Coach Olin as your head coach, you're really never out of a game. You got defensive leader in Halbert, offensive leader in Kyler Sapp. And again, Kyler Sapp could be one of those individuals that kind of takes a leap forward this year as a junior and kind of steps away from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I just, like Keith said, anytime you got a Coach Olin offense, you're going to be putting points on the board and slinging the ball. So
yeah, and they'll go out there and they'll compete for a TAAC conference title. They're going to have to get through Ottawa Hills though, so they'll go out there and they'll compete. I do think that Eden Edgerton game in week 1 that will be exciting. It's always a pretty good rivalry game as well. So 2 teams in Eden and Edgerton that have some questions kind of coming into the season. I think this game is going to play leaps and bounds for the rest of the season and kind of set the tone. So I think depending on how that game goes and who ends up winning, I think that will kind of determine how Eden's season goes.
Yeah, they got 2 games at the beginning of the season, Edgerton, Antwerp, then the 2 games at the end of the season, Elmwood and Ottawa Hills. So see what they do.
All right, let's move on. A couple other teams here. Looking at Hilltop, last year's record, they were 1-9. They did snap a 22-game losing streak. This is Coach Nathan Massey's 7th year at Hilltop. They've got 10 returning starters on offense. They've got 8 returning starters on defense. They do have more experience this year, which is good to see. But again, they've been really kind of right in the struggle bus here as late. So what are your guys' thoughts on Hilltop?
I just, you look at their stats, 27 turnovers last year, only averaged 18.7 yards a game. Running the ball. It's just, you're not going to win very many ball games doing that. So they got to figure something out differently there.
And I think there's only one way you can go is up. And I think you saw that last year. They had a 22-game losing streak. They got their first win. You got to take that and you got to run with it as much as you can. So, I mean, it's tough. The kids playing, you have a losing program. It's not fun for anyone. No one likes to lose. But, again, you got to try to make the most of it and just continue to get out there and grind and trying to better your program each year after year. So, yep. Keith, AJ?
Yeah, just keep working every day. Every day you're there, just keep grinding because it really does benefit you in the long run in the future, not just in football because football builds character. And you're going to have losses in your life, and you're going to have to overcome them. So to keep fighting every day, all season long last year, if you keep doing that this year, it's going to set you up well for life and then continue to build the program for future generations.
Yeah, have experience coming back. I mean, you're 1-9 last year. And at one time, I think, back when Tony was in school, Hilltop was one of the better teams in the area.
Sure were.
So,
All right, let's move on. A couple other teams. We're just about done with the previews. Looking at Montpelier, last year's record 3-7. They won 3 games for the first time since 2019. Are led by head coach Andy Robinson. They're more experienced coming into the season, which that's good to see. They bring back their leading rusher and Brendan Friend. He's back along with the experienced wide receivers, and they bring back every skill position and the quarterback. So they're definitely looking to improve, and they're on the upcoming this season. Wouldn't be surprised if they get more than 3 wins this year. So what are your guys' thoughts here on Montpelier?
Yeah, I think they definitely got the schedule to do it. Unfortunately, their first game's against Antwerp, so going to come out and then face the buzzsaw right off the bat. But, looking at the last year, they had 30 turnovers. Definitely got to take care of the turnovers. And I think if you take care of the turnovers, you can turn things around quickly.
Very true.
Yeah, and also the 35 points per game that they gave up on defense hurts a lot. If you're giving up that many points per game, you're not going to win a whole lot. So the defense is going to have to step up this year, and they do have some experience coming back, but they're going to have to really show for it.
Yeah, and everything that you hear from Coach Robinson this year, last year, the year before, is about building a culture, which he's been doing. He's been bringing back some of the kids from the past to introduce them to like the current roster, just trying to build that culture of again, talking about the past, Montpelier was at one time a football powerhouse
in the 90s. Yeah,
absolutely.
I even did an interview.
Yeah, right. Yes, you did. That's right.
And that was pretty impressive. Montpelier used to be very quality football club back in the 90s. So, I think Coach Robinson, he's trying to get things there, and I do think they're moving in the right direction. It's just going to take some time, and we've talked about that. What's the phrase go? Rome wasn't built in a what?
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Rome wasn't built in a day. So it's going to take some time, but I'm looking at them doing bigger things. They bring back a lot of key pieces, and I think they'll be in good shape this season.
Agree.
Last team here, looking at Independent, North Central, and I said that I'm still kind of curious. I know that this is their second season, but I'm surprised that they're playing without a conference. That has to be so tough for scheduling wise, like to find open slates throughout the season. And we were kind of talking about that before.
Look at Cincinnati; they're playing at Cincinnati College Prep.
Yeah,
they're playing at a neutral site, but gee whiz.
Last year they played some long games, but for being a first year varsity program, they went 6-5 and they made the playoffs. So that's very impressive. I would say, kind of starting that program up, building it to where it was. I believe they played a JV schedule too before their full varsity season. So to come out and have a winning season, that's a very nice job. Led by head coach Scott Thompson. I think really the main thing that's going to plague them is injuries. The numbers aren't all that strong, and there's been that kind of debate whether should they have gone 8-man with some of the numbers, but they're trying to dog it out and they're playing 11-man, and they're having some success too. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Eagles this year?
If they keep having success like they did last year, you could start seeing those numbers start to climb a little bit as more and more people start taking interest in their program. So it's not necessarily a bad idea that they started out, right away going all in on the varsity program. Hopefully they can continue to grow and build those numbers, because it would be cool to see another team pop up. It's anytime you're seeing new teams form, it's good for football, as opposed to when teams start dropping off, then you start to worry. So good luck to North Central this year.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of kids on last year as well, and they talked about that too.
Yep,
we did. Just like building the culture from basically the ground up in like 2 years.
Yeah.
So you went from the floor to the elevator, like boom, and you had a winning record. So, and then it sounded like they had fans that would actually get on the buses and travel to some of the games because they had pretty good following. So.
Sure. Yeah, I think the Eagles will continue to, kind of improve on things. They play a competitive schedule, some teams that they can compete with, and they've got a star running back and linebacker in Joe Burt, and I think he'll do big things this year as well. So that concludes our team preview. So let's go ahead. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Crystal Vasquez of AmeriMade Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio. Give her a call today at 419-799-1243. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio. Call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105. The Drop Zone Pizzeria is the #1 voted pizza restaurant in the region. Check them out for pizza, wings, subs, and more. Located in Ayersville and Stryker, or ask them about their traveling food trailer. Optimal Performance Fitness is your go-to gym in Northwest Ohio, providing group fitness classes, personal training, and sports performance sessions for area athletes. Located in Napoleon, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-438-7265. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast. A couple different sections here we got. So coming up next here was the power rankings. So we'll go through the power rankings. I'll release the preseason power rankings for Northwest Ohio. And these guys will kind of roast me, and we'll see how accurate they are. So let's go ahead and let's get things rolling. Let's start with pick number 25. At 25, we have Swanton. 24, we have Fairview. 23, we have Hicksville. 22, we have Evergreen. 21, we have Montpelier. And 20, we have Edgerton. Thoughts on this group here?
It's anybody's ball game.
Yeah.
I don't know that I disagree. I think maybe Edgerton could be a little higher, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's go on. Next group of teams, looking at 19, Paulding. Number 18, Ottawa Glandorf. Number 17, Delta. Number 16, North Central. Number 15, Eden.
My really only comment there is Paulding's kind of got to prove their place. We're going to see where they end up at.
Yep.
I think they're ones we kind of talked about. They're one of the kind of underdogs in the GMC. If they beat some of those teams, they'll definitely climb right up the rankings as the season goes. Looking at number 14, Wayne Trace. Number 13, Napoleon. Number 12, Ayersville. Number 11, Bryan. And number 10, Columbus Grove. Thoughts here?
I like Columbus Grove a little higher than I believe. I think we should be, personally, I think they should be up in probably inside the top 10. I know you got them at 10, but I think they should be a little higher.
I think even just kind of personal thoughts. One team, maybe Bryan, if they kind of shock some people, I think they could do some big things. They could possibly climb up a little bit too. So they're kind of ones to keep an eye on this season. Let's look at the next little block. Looking at number 9, we have Wauseon. Number 8, Ayersville. Number 7, Tenora. Number 6, Patrick Henry. Thoughts on this group here?
Sonora has just a horrible first 3 games. Actually, 4 of their first 5, honestly. Could be a little higher than what they will be in next month, I guess. But if any team in that top 10 could drop out, it could be the Rams.
I agree 100%. I mean, the Rams, we mentioned that earlier, they could be 0-3 coming out of, and then they're obviously not going to be in the top 10 any longer. And that's by no fault of them. It's just, they're playing a tough schedule. So
brutal schedule.
All right, let's look at the top 5. Looking at Archbold, number 4, Defiance, number 3, Van Wert, number 2, Antwerp, and number 1, Liberty Center. Thoughts here?
Yeah. It sounds pretty good to me. I mean, I think, to me, Liberty Center is the number 1 team in the area until you proved me otherwise.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Antwerp can compete for that spot as well. I mean, they were both there, so it's 1 and 2. But I think if you put Liberty Center against Antwerp, Liberty beats them. So I think that's 1 and 2 is perfect. Van Wert's the only one I'm not sure about. Losing Aiden Pratt is a huge, huge loss.
Yep.
But again, coach knows what he's doing down there. So it looks good to me.
Yeah, and actually I realized, because this was kind of thrown together last minute, I actually had Ayersville in there twice, so I'll post the corrected version. But anyways, I'm sure it'll spark some good conversation nonetheless. That concludes our power rankings, but those will get posted. Like I said, they'll be accurate as we go. Next section, it's a new one that we added last year, and we had really good results with it. So we got 3 of them, and we're on the hot takes section. So again, this is where fans send in some of the hot takes, spark some good conversation between us, and we got 3 good ones here today. So we'll kind of go into this section here next. Looking at the first one, Wayne Trace opens eyes, and we kind of discussed and touched on it earlier. Wayne Trace is one of those teams, if they've improved their offense, their defense was solid last year. I think they could be at the top of the GMC easily. So what are your guys' thoughts here?
Completely agree with that comment. They could definitely open some eyes. They, like you said, could even be towards the top of the GMC if they play their cards right.
Yeah, I agree. With what you guys said, everything could be in the top 3. Obviously, number 1's probably already spoken for.
Established.
Yes. But if Wayne Trace was to finish 2nd and 3rd, I don't think anybody would blink an eye.
I think, looking at the GMC, like we said, I think number 1, we kind of know who's there, and that's Antwerp. But I think you really look at 2, 3, 4, even 5 in the GMC. Those spots are up for grabs on who's going to finish where. So, Wayne Trace gets some things together. I think they could be possibly one of those teams that are competing, for like a runner-up finish in the GMC. But we'll see. It's really going to depend on that offense, I think.
Yeah, if Wayne Trace finished 8-2 or 7-3, I don't think anybody would be surprised one bit.
Tony, you have any thoughts?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, let's move on to the next hot take here. Defiance goes 8-2, and we really kind of talked about this earlier. And Defiance have the pieces there to have a very good season this year. I think if they can figure some things out on the O-line and D-line, but athleticism-wise, they're going to go out there and they're going to compete with anyone out there. Brez Ziffel at quarterback, Brogan Castillo at running back, Anthony Wilder out at wide receiver. Brady Borton will do some big things too. So I think I'm excited to see Defiance play this season. I think, especially they start off the season, and we'll get into our picks, so I won't reveal who we're going to pick for the River Rock rivalry. But I think, they'll beat some of those teams in the WBL that, have historically been towards the top. So keep an eye out for Defiance this season.
Yeah, I think Walpock and Van Wert are the two games I'll be watching, and that very well could be if they went 8-2, the two games they lose. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, Defiance should be pretty good.
Keith, AJ, any thoughts?
No, you guys pretty much summed it up.
Yep. And the last hot take we have here, PH wins the NWOAL, and really, I don't think. I mean, it's kind of far-fetched, but it's not at the same time. If the cards fall in the right places, we talked about in the NWOAL, Liberty Centers, they've got the X marked on their back. But PH and Archbold, I think, are the two teams that are going to be right on their tails, really competing for a title this year. So thoughts on this one?
Boy, they would have to catch a break or two, but I mean, Coach I can make anything happen. Unfortunately, I think two of their tougher games are on the road.
I was just going to say the same thing, Keith. If you're playing Liberty Center and Archbold at home, I could say, maybe there's a chance. But playing Liberty Center at Liberty Center and playing Archbold at Archbold, I agree with you, Keith.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that choice isn't, or that decision is not going to be made until Liberty Center and Patrick Henry play each other. Because I think Patrick Henry could be looking pretty solid in the conference all the way up till they play LC, and then that's going to be the deciding factor who wins or loses that game. Depending on where Archbold's in there too. But Patrick Henry's going to have to win.
What week is the LC game?
I was just looking at it. It would be
week 7.
Somewhere in the middle of the season.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Liberty Center's week 7, Archbold's week 9.
I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see. But I wouldn't say it's too far fetched out there. So definitely a possibility. All right. Well, that concludes our hot takes. Keep sending those in. We appreciate the fans that they help out with this, and it's always good to hear your thoughts, and we kind of discuss them here. So last section before we go to our next break, a new section with Matthew Clark. He's a big contributor for us, so he's going to be having a section. It's Matthew's Breakout Players of the Week. So he's picking one offensive player and one defensive player of the week who he thinks, looking at matchups and stuff that are really going to contribute and have big weeks. For offense, he went with Brylan Parker from Van Wert. Reason being is, Brian has had a lot of holes to fill on the defensive side of the ball, especially on the D-line, and inexperience is also going to be an issue for them. So I expect a big week from Brylan Parker. Also, Brylan will be starting at quarterback this year, so that will allow him to scramble a lot more. And now that he has full control of the offense, I expect him to be a big issue for opposing teams. So very good report from Matthew. On the defensive side, he's going with Cohen Hulbert from Eden. Reason being is Edgerton is only returning one starter on the offensive side of the ball, and I feel like that will help Cohen have a great start to the season and a big week 1. So I think you can't go wrong with those two players, and a very good analysis of those.
Very good. Yeah, Hulbert could have a heck of a year. Could be defensive player of the year in the area, quite honestly.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. We're going to take our last break here to hear from our sponsors.
Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at NWOBball.com. The Thunderdome is your local indoor softball and baseball facility offering private lessons, turf infield, batting cages, and pitching machine rentals. even offering a golf simulator. Located in Archbold, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-906-3643. Nicely Rentals and Storage is your go-to venue for graduation parties, birthdays, weddings, and more. Also offering vehicle storage, table and chair rentals, and U-Haul equipment. Located in Ayersville, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-439-6177.
We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast. Last little bit here, and it's a big one. We're doing our Week 1 game predictions. So we'll hear all the hate, and I'm sure we'll see some of our predictions on the locker rooms. But anyways, we're going to let you hear what our thoughts are on who's going to win what games this week. So
I'm winning, suckers.
We'll see. And maybe I'll figure out a prize for whoever wins at the end of the year. So
now he's going to give away a prize, AJ.
Now he's giving away
we'll figure it. I'll get creative with it. So.
I guess I'll just have to win a second year in a row.
Yeah, I tell you what, if since you won, you get to put the helmet on during the podcast. How about
there
that?
You go. Oh, man. So let's go ahead. Let's get into it. Looking at games here. First game we have on the slate is Eden at Edgerton. Looking at picks here. I had Eden. Keith, who are you going with?
Yeah, I think Eden takes this.
AJ?
I'm going to go with Edgerton.
Tony?
I'm going to Eden.
And Bryce had Edgerton, and Matthew had Eden. Looking at the next game here, Swanton at Paulding. Again, we kind of talked about Paulding's going to be a tough team this year, so I think they're gonna have an improved season. So I'm going Paulding on this one.
Coach Menzie starts off 1-0, and Paulding.
Yeah, I'm with you there. They're going to start off strong, Paulding.
I'm going with Paulding.
Bryce had Swanton, and Matthew went with Paulding. So Bryce is the odd man out there. Look at the next game, Fort Recovery at Wayne Trace. Again, we've been kind of talking high upon Wayne Trace, and if they're going to have a good season, they're going to have to start off with a win against Fort Recovery. So I'm going Wayne Trace.
Raiders
for me.
Let's go Raiders.
Bryce had Wayne Trace, and Matthew had Wayne Trace as well. Next game, Ayersville at Delta, and that game was a pretty crazy game that came down to the final play.
Yep.
And
Last year. Yep.
yes, and was it Delta? I think Delta ended up winning it. Right?
I think they scooped up a fumble
scooped
on the
and scored.
last minute or so.
Yeah, it was like on a tuck rule kind of thing. I believe I remember right.
Yeah.
Like the ball got fumbled and thought it was a pass.
Yep.
But yeah.
So that game's at Delta this season. So I think the Pilots are going to come back and get them this year. Both teams, lost a lot of talent, but I think Ayersville, they've got a really good O-line and D-line. I think they're going to take care of business, and the Pilots are going to come out with a win.
Pilots.
I was like you, Logan, but I almost went with Delta because they're playing at Delta, but I think Ayersville is going to pull it out.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Delta, so they were the only two that went against the grain. Look at the next game. Patrick Henry at Hicksville. I think this one's kind of a no-brainer. Patrick Henry's loaded, and I think they're going to roll into Hicksville, and they're going to take care of business. I'm going the Patriots.
Yep. PH.
Yeah, Patriots all the way.
PH.
Bryce and Matthew both had Patrick Henry. Looking at the next game, big one. We'll be at this game, Liberty Center at Tenora, and this will be our NWO Sports Game of the Week. As much as I like Tenora, and I went to Tenora, I think Coach Casey Moeller's getting those guys right over there, and I'm going to have to go Liberty Center on this one. I'm sure I'll hear the hate here once this is released. So
I'm sure we all will.
We can't pick with your heart. Much as I follow Logan, going to take the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Liberty Center here. I hope I'm wrong, though.
Clear eyes, full hearts. Well, I mean, you can't go with your heart, Keith. Come on. Come on. No, I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to give Coach Becker a shout out, and then hopefully, we'll see what happens. But definitely going to have his hands full, but I'm going to go with the Rams.
I mean, it is at Tenora, so that's kind of to their advantage. So Bryce had Liberty Center, Matthew had Liberty Center. So Tony was the only one that went to Tenora. So we'll see.
They're playing at Tenora. They definitely won't be playing on that smooth turf. That's for sure.
Right. Next game, Montpelier at Antwerp, and we know Antwerp is the team to beat in the GMC. I think they take care of business in Week 1. I'm going the Archers.
Archers big.
Yeah, Archers.
Antwerp.
Bryce and Matthew both had Antwerp as well. Looking at the next game, Fairview at Wauseon. Again, we know Fairview struggles. I think Coach Rakes is going to do big things with them. Yep. He's back for his second stint, but I think Wauseon, being the bigger school, they've got a little bit more talent. I'm going the Wauseon Indians.
I think Coach Rakes will have them competitive for a while, but I think the talent for Wauseon pulls away in the end. So Indians.
Yeah, I think it's going to take breaks a little bit, a couple games, get things flowing the way he wants it to. So for this week 1 here, I'm going to go Wauseon.
Wauseon for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Wauseon as well. So Wauseon across the board. Next game, Archbold at Genoa. Archbold had a pretty successful season last year. I think they're going to continue to grow. They have some big pieces back. So I'm going Archbold.
Streaks.
Archbold.
Streaks in the passing attack.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Archbold as well. Archbold across the board again. Van Wert at Bryan. I think this game could get interesting. Yeah. Bryan's got a lot of momentum. We know Van Wert has made a change. Their running back is now playing quarterback, and I saw, Van Wert struggled a little bit, and actually I believe they lost to Crestview in their scrimmage. Bryan, they were 6-5. They're on the upcoming brand new facility. They're going to have a ton of people out there for that game. Yep. It's going to be packed. I'm going with the upset on this one. I'm going Bryan.
Pulling for Coach Redhead, but I took the Cougars of Van Wert.
Yeah, I'm with you, Keith. I'm going with Van Wert.
Logan, I'm on your side. I think the home field is going to have everybody kind of jacked up, and we'll see what Bryan does. See if Coach Redhead's got that defense ready.
That's right. Bryce went with Van Wert, and Matthew went with Van Wert. Next game, Elmwood at Evergreen. We got to actually see Elmwood in the scrimmage, and they look like they're going to be another quality ball club. They might actually be down a little bit this year. They lost a lot of talent, especially at quarterback position. But I'm going to go Elmwood in this game.
I'm picking an upset here. I'm taking Evergreen.
Really?
Yes.
What's your reasoning?
I think Elmwood just lost a lot of talent on the offense and defensive side of the ball. And Evergreen does have some starters coming back. So I think plus it's at home. I'm pulling for Evergreen.
AJ?
Yeah, I wasn't real, impressed with Elmwood when they scrimmaged Sonora. A lot of things they need to work on before week 1, but they are still a pretty good program, so I'm going to stick with Elmwood.
Keith, you just made me change my pick. Oops. I literally went in there and changed it.
I saw Tony over there clicking. And
I'm like, you know what? I agree. I think the home, and then again, I'm like with AJ, I don't think I was really impressed with Elmwood, so we'll see what they do.
Bryce had Elmwood and Matthew had Elmwood. Next game, it's the big one. And actually, this should be the NWO Sports Game of the Week. We'll be at this game as well. So this will be the game on Thursday, and then we'll have our Friday game as well. How about that? So it's the River Rock rivalry. Napoleon 4-7 at Defiance 7-5. Those are last year's records. This is a big game. It's at Defiance. I just think Defiance has got too many pieces this year. Napoleon's got some questions to answer, so I'm going the Bulldogs on this one.
I picked Defiance. This is one of those games where you can throw out obviously records don't matter in week 1, but experience in the hands of Defiance. But you can just pick them. I'm taking the Dogs.
Yeah, I'm going with Bulldogs.
Yeah, I'm going with the Dogs only because they're at home. I think if you're playing this at Napoleon, it might be going the other direction because I think Coach Swery, with having the full off season with the team, could be an entirely different animal. So, but since it's at home, I'm going Bulldogs.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Defiance as well. So this will actually be the first Defiance Napoleon game I've ever been to. So I'm pretty excited for it.
Same here.
Great atmosphere.
Yeah. So I've never been, but we'll be there. We'll be on the sidelines and checking things out, and we'll see who ends up winning that one. Next game, Ottawa Glandorf at Eastwood. I think OG's still kind of in a slump. Eastwood's still a quality program. Eastwood has a new coach, but I'm going Eastwood in this one.
Eastwood.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Eastwood as well. A couple more games here. Columbus Grove at Pandora Gilboa. This game is also a Thursday slate game, and this is a pretty big rivalry, but I think Columbus Grove and Coach Andy Schaefer, they're going to take care of business, and they're going to win this one again. So I'm going Columbus Grove.
Going Columbus Grove.
And Columbus Grove from Bryce and Matthew as well. Hilltop at Ridgedale. I really don't know much about Ridgedale. Actually, I don't even know where it is, to be honest. But they had 3 wins last year. And I'm going to go Ridgedale on this one. I think Hilltop they're still got some things to work out before they start winning some more ball games.
Yeah, hopefully we see a positive season from Hilltop. But for week 1, taking Ridgedale.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ridgedale as well here.
Ridgedale for me.
Bryce had Ridgedale, and Matthew was the only one that actually had Hilltop. So we'll see who wins that one. Last game here, North Central 6-5 at Woodmore 1-9. I think North Central is going to win this one. They did some big things last season. I think they're going to continue to build off that. They play a schedule that they can be competitive in every game. So I'm going the Eagles.
Yep. NC.
Yep. North Central for me.
Yeah, North Central for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had North Central as well. So that concludes our week 1 game predictions. So closing thoughts, guys. First true podcast of the 2023 season.
I'm looking forward to it. We kind of get a double dose of football this week going to the game on Thursday and then Friday night. It's going to be a lot of fun and good introduction back into the season.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just to getting eager to get started.
Yeah, I can't believe it's Friday night football starting. It's just it's hard to believe.
It's going to happen. It happens every year.
Yeah, it does. Right,
You know?
but moving the season up a week, you really don't kind of get that Friday night under the lights feeling to about week 3, maybe, where midway through the first quarter, sun starts to go down.
Right.
I mean, now the first couple of weeks, you're still playing technically in daylight, probably into the third quarter. So once week 3 and 4 starts to come around and, starts to get a little darker earlier, and it's just a whole different atmosphere once everything is under the lights, per se.
Yeah, I just have one side note too. Like, if you guys ever see us out in public or whatever, feel free to say hi. Like, it's always awesome
Absolutely.
to hear support. Like, when we went to Liberty Center games last year in their playoffs, people would say hi to us. And,
Yeah, it was great.
And
Really
that was awesome. We love talking to people. We love talking football. So we appreciate your support. And if you ever want to say hi, we'll be sure to talk to you. So other than that, that's week 1 in the books. So we'll see how it keeps going. And I'm excited for this season.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's wrap things up. We'd like to again thank all of our sponsors that make this possible: 3Chord, Batt and Stevens Body Shop, Tenor Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, The Drop Zone Pizzeria, Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty, Optimal Performance Fitness, Nicely Storage and Rentals, and the Thunderdome. We'd also like to give a special thanks to Jeff Batt for allowing us to use his amazing new facility at Batt and Stevens Body Shop for today's podcast. Stay tuned for the next NWO Sports Podcast in the near future, and thanks for watching.